Hi, in this video you're going to learn how to open Photoshop, navigate Photoshop, open images into Photoshop, and finally how to save in Photoshop. So let's begin. So first thing, you'll notice your dock doesn't have Photoshop automatically on it. So let's add it to our dock. So let's go to our spotlight in the top right corner, type in Photoshop, preferably spelled correctly. And you'll see two options. There'll be Adobe Photoshop Lightroom 4 and Adobe Photoshop CS6. We're going to get into Adobe Lightroom 4 later. For now, we want the CS6 version of Photoshop. So I'm going to click and drag that icon all the way into my dock, and then release. This way, every time you log into your computer, you'll very easily be able to access Photoshop. So let's open up Photoshop. It's going to do a little dance, and Photoshop's a pretty big program, so it's going to take a little bit to open. There we go. So now we're in Photoshop. I'm going to make sure to make mine full screen. And now let's talk about how to navigate Photoshop. So up here on the top, this is going to be your menu. So you got File, Edit, Image, Layers, Type, Select, Filter, 3D, View, Windows, and Help. That's a lot of different options. We're going to primarily work with File, Edit, and Image. We may visit some of these, but for the most part, we'll be in this range. So this is your menu. Right below that, you have your options to maximize, minimize, and close out of Photoshop. And below that, you're going to have this bar. This menu bar is going to correspond to your tools. I'm going to refer to this as your tool options or tool menu, depending upon what I feel like. So this is going to change depending upon what tool you have selected. So over on the left-hand side, this is your toolbar. This is where Photoshop stores your most commonly used tools. If you leave your cursor over one of the tools, the Help option will come, and it'll let you know the name of the tool, and also give you the keyboard shortcut. Some of these tools have a little arrow in the bottom right-hand corner. That lets you know that it shares the space with other tools. So if you click and hold, it'll give you the other options. So this has lasso tool, polygonal lasso tool, and magnetic lasso tool, all in the same icon. So if I select a different one, now it's a lasso tool instead of the polygonal. We'll get into this a little bit later, and we'll start to learn tools as we go. Over on the right-hand side, this is going to be your windows. This is going to tell you a whole bunch of other stuff that's going on with your image. Depending upon what we're working on, we may choose to have different windows open. You can also choose to close your windows. Go to the top right, go to Close Tab Group, and voila, your windows are closed. You can also close your toolbar if you like. There's a little X over there. Most likely you're going to do it accidentally. So don't panic if you can't find one of your windows or you can't find your toolbar. The easiest way to get it back is to go up to Window in your menu. And you can then either find the ones you want from this list, so Tools is way at the bottom, or if you want a quick fix, you can go to Window, Workspace, and you can choose either Photography or Essentials. So I'll switch over to Photography. And my toolbar didn't come back. This is embarrassing. Let's switch it over to Essentials. Still not there. That's fun. So I'm going to go back down here and just click Tools. There we go. So apparently it didn't want to cooperate. So I'm going to drag this back over here. Now it's snapped over to the left-hand side, which is good. Now let's talk about how to open images into Photoshop. So there's a whole variety of ways to open images into Photoshop. I'm going to start with the least effective and work our way up from there. So the first way you can do it is you can go to your menu and go to File, Open. And this will open up your browsing options to kind of go through all the files on your computer. I'm going to choose not to do this because sometimes it's a little clunky. So I'll press Cancel. Instead, I'm going to minimize Photoshop. I'm going to open up the folder I want to use, so it stores all my photos in it. And let's say I want to open this photo. Okay, I'm going to make sure it's selected. And I can right-click on it and go to Open With, and choose from a list, Photoshop. This is a handy option if you haven't already launched Photoshop, so it's not already running. But sometimes it can be a little frustrating because occasionally it doesn't show up, and I'm not entirely certain why. So if that's not happening, don't worry. We have one other final technique, which is my preferred way of opening images into Photoshop. So if you click and select your image, you can then drag it all the way into your dock and put it on the Photoshop icon. And now it opens up in Photoshop. So that is good. Now I have an image. Image is open in Photoshop. Let's add another image in Photoshop. So I'm going to minimize this again. So I'm going to click and drag, actually I'm going to do a different file. I'm going to click and drag this image into Photoshop again. And now I have two different images in Photoshop. So if you look up here right below your tool options, you have two photos. It has their names. When you click on them, you switch between them. So it's just like you're using tabs with your browser. So with that said, let's talk about another way to open images in Photoshop that I'm going to ask you to avoid for now. So if I have my window open over here, and I want to open this image, a lot of people try dragging it directly into Photoshop's screen. Okay, this works. It's in here now, but if I actually look up here, it's actually overwriting the other file, and I can see it down here. It also won't let you do anything. There's going to be this X through it. This is what's known as a smart object. We'll talk about those later, about why they're useful and why you don't want to use them. But for now, I don't suggest opening images this way. This is more effective if you're working with image composites. So I'm going to press Escape to get rid of it. And then now, I am going to teach you how to briefly navigate through Photoshop. So a real easy way to make sure everything fits on your screens is to use some very basic keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to hold down the Apple button, Command button, or Launch button, depending upon your keyboard. And I'm going to press the plus key at the same time. So I'm holding down Command and I'm tapping plus. This will allow me to zoom into Photoshop. So you can keep zooming in until you're looking at individual pixels. Very handy if you're working really, really close and really, really specific. Not so handy right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Command 0, and that will automatically make my image full screen. Conversely, I can press Command minus, and that will have me zoom out. So you can zoom all the way out. Again, Command 0 will bring it back to full screen. So let's say we made our changes. There'll be another video on how to make changes to your images in Photoshop. Now let's talk about saving them. So to save an image when you're done, we're going to do File, so up in your menu, File, and I didn't make any changes, so I have to go to Save As. When you choose Save As, you're going to create an additional copy of this image. So I'm going to give it a different name. I'm going to have it save as Photo Copy. Down here you have format options. When you are working in Photoshop and you're done with your image, I'm going to say make sure you save it as a JPEG. So it says JPEG, that's a JPEG. So I'm going to select that. If it has you save in Photoshop, it's not going to be the file type we want. That's a PSD. Again, we'll cover that in a different video, but for now, I want you to make sure it's set to JPEG. When you're done, press Save. One more option will come up. These are your JPEG options. It has to do with quality. For now, anywhere between 8 and 10 is fine. If file sizes are very important, you can go all the way down to 1, or you can go all the way up to 12 if you want the most quality. You're not going to notice the difference between an 8 and a 12. So I'm going to leave it at 10. I'm going to press OK. And now I'm just going to make sure it's saved. Notice I saved a new copy of it because I did Save As. So now it's going to be called Photocopy. So if I go back to my folder where this image was, it should be here, but it's not at the moment. I must have saved it somewhere else. I have made a fool of myself. Oh, here it is. I just had to refresh the folder. So there it is. So in this video, you learned how to open Photoshop. You learned how to navigate through Photoshop. We've learned how to zoom in, zoom out, and access full screen mode in Photoshop. How to open images into Photoshop. And lastly, how to save your files in Photoshop. So hopefully it's not too much for you. Get used to using these tools and using these tricks because you're going to be doing this a lot. Thank you.